beneath the lantern sky. On a warm evening in early autumn, Emma wandered through the town's lantern festival. Strings of golden lights floated above the river, and laughter drifted between the food stalls. She had come alone, telling herself it was only for the atmosphere, but in truth, she was hoping to see him. Daniel. They had met months before, in the library where Emma worked. He was quiet, always searching for history books, yet somehow his presence filled the room. Their first conversation had been about an old map, but it had stretched into hours of easy laughter and thoughtful silence. Since then, each meeting felt like a page of a story neither dared to finish. Tonight, as Emma paused by the lantern-filled bridge, she heard his voice. "Emma." She turned. There he was, his smile shy, but his eyes brighter than the lanterns above. "I thought I wouldn't find you," he admitted, holding a folded piece of paper. "I wanted to give you this." She took it, her hands trembling. Unfolding it, she found a sketch of the river, lanterns drifting across the page. At the center, he had drawn two figures standing together. "It's us," Daniel said softly. "I didn't know how to say it, so I drew it. I want to be beside you, not just here, but in everything that comes after." For a moment, Emma couldn't speak. The festival sounds faded until only his words remained, fragile and beautiful. Then she smiled, tears warming her eyes. "You always find the right way to say things, Daniel. I've been waiting to hear this." He stepped closer, hesitant, as though afraid she might disappear like a lantern in the wind. But when she reached for his hand, he let out a breath of relief. They stood together on the bridge, the paper still between them, the river glowing with drifting lights. Around them, the festival moved on, but Emma knew this was the moment she would always remember, the night when friendship turned into something deeper, when hope became love. And beneath the lantern sky, Daniel whispered, "Stay with me." Her answer was simple, steady, and true. Always. The bridge at dusk. The small town was quiet that evening, with the river flowing gently under the wooden bridge. Emma stood there, leaning on the railing, her eyes fixed on the orange glow of the sunset. She had always come here when she needed to think, and tonight her heart was heavier than usual. Daniel arrived a few minutes later, his footsteps soft on the planks. He didn't say anything at first, only stood beside her, looking at the same fading sky. Emma felt his presence before she turned her head. He was the reason her heart raced, the reason she both longed to stay and feared to speak. "You always come here when something's on your mind," Daniel finally said, his voice low, almost carried away by the breeze. Emma tried to smile. "It's the only place that feels honest." Silence stretched between them, filled only by the sound of water and crickets beginning their song. She wanted to tell him everything. How she had loved him for years, how every moment with him felt like a promise unspoken. But she was afraid of breaking the fragile balance of their friendship. Daniel shifted closer, his hand brushing against hers on the railing. The touch was light, hesitant, but it sent a shiver through her. "Emma," he whispered, "I don't want to keep pretending." Her breath caught. "Pretending? That I don't feel the same way you do." He looked at her then, really looked, his eyes reflecting the last streaks of daylight. "I've been in love with you for so long, and I thought I'd ruin everything if I said it. But silence feels worse." Emma's heart surged, her fear unraveling like thread. She laughed softly, tears forming in her eyes. "I thought I was the only one afraid." Daniel reached for her hand fully this time, holding it tight. The warmth between them was undeniable, like the bridge itself had been waiting for this moment. As the sun dipped below the horizon, they stood together, no more words needed. The river carried away their doubts, and the night welcomed their beginning. For the first time, Emma realized the bridge wasn't just a place to think, it was the place where her heart finally found home. Promise of the bridge. On the edge of a small town stood an old wooden bridge. It wasn't beautiful or grand, but to Daniel and Claire, it was everything. It was where they met on a rainy afternoon, both seeking shelter under its creaking roof. She had dropped her umbrella, and he had picked it up. That small gesture turned into hours of talking, laughter echoing above the river. From that day on, the bridge became theirs. They met there after school, shared secrets, argued, made up, and dreamed about the future. Daniel would promise, no matter where life takes us, we'll always come back here. Claire would smile, pretending not to believe him, though her heart always did. Years passed. Daniel left for college in another city, while Claire stayed behind to care for her family. Letters became their lifeline, words carrying warmth across the miles. But as time went on, the letters slowed. Calls grew shorter. Eventually, silence filled the space where their voices once lived. Claire still walked to the bridge sometimes, leaning on its rails, watching the river carry leaves downstream. She wondered if he remembered, or if life had simply pulled him too far away. 10 years later, on a golden autumn morning, Claire returned to the bridge out of habit. She found someone standing there, hands in pockets, waiting. Her breath caught, Daniel. Older, taller, eyes still the same. I kept my promise, he said softly, almost afraid to break the moment. Claire laughed through tears. You're late. Only by a decade, he smiled, stepping closer. The years melted away. The bridge creaked beneath their weight, just as it had when they were young. And under the same roof that first sheltered them, they began again, not as two strangers meeting by chance, but as two hearts finally finding their way back home. Promise by the river. Emma always found peace by the river that curved gently behind her grandmother's house. The water was calm, the trees leaned in like guardians, and every evening the sky painted soft colors across the surface. It was there, one summer afternoon, that she met Daniel. He was sketching the landscape, his notebook balanced on his knee. When Emma paused nearby, he looked up and smiled, the kind of smile that seemed to recognize her even though they were strangers. They began to talk, first about art, then about books, and finally about dreams. By sunset, it felt as though they had known each other for years. That summer turned into a series of riverbank evenings, Daniel sketching, Emma reading beside him, their conversations drifting between laughter and quiet confessions. He told her he wanted to be an architect, to design buildings that felt alive. She told him she dreamed of becoming a writer, to give words to feelings too big for the heart to carry alone. When the season began to fade, so did time. Daniel had to leave for university in another city, and Emma stayed behind. On their last evening together, the air smelled of rain. Daniel took her hand and said, "No matter where I go, I'll find my way back to this river. Back to you." The years that followed tested their promise. Distance made everything harder, missed calls, unanswered letters, and long silences. There were moments when Emma thought the river had taken their words away, carrying them downstream to vanish forever. Yet whenever she sat by the water, she remembered his voice, steady, certain. One spring evening, after nearly 3 years apart, Emma returned to the river with a notebook in hand. She had started writing stories about waiting, about hope. As she looked across the water, she noticed someone standing on the opposite bank, sketchbook in hand. Her heart stopped. Daniel raised his head, the same familiar smile spreading across his face. He crossed the small bridge and walked toward her, slower than she remembered, as though savoring each step. "I told you I'd come back," he said softly, touching her hand like he had that final summer day. Emma's eyes filled with tears. "And I told you I'd wait." The river flowed between them and around them, carrying their years of distance away. And in that moment, beneath the sky painted in soft evening colors, the promise was no longer just words, it was their beginning again.